let's go ahead and talk about the elephant in the room. People see my story and they immediately think, well, of course she built wealth, or of course she paid off $130,000 of debt. She's a lawyer, she has all these degrees, and she was making over $250,000 a year. Of course somebody at that stage could build wealth and pay off debt. And I get it, right? I get what that looks like on the surface. But here's the truth. I didn't learn to build wealth when I was making over $250,000 a year. I didn't learn how to make my money when I was making that income. And surprisingly, I didn't start saving, investing, or paying off my debt when I was making $250,000 a year. Nope. Those habits, they all started way before that. When I was making between $50,000 and $60,000 a year, that's when I started changing those habits. That's when I learned how to manage money. And that's when I started paying off my debt. I actually paid off most of my debt when I was making less than $100,000 a year. I paid off all my credit cards, I paid off my car, and then when my income increased, yes, my lifestyle inflated a little bit, but it was a lot easier for me to pay myself with just one paycheck and use the rest towards saving and investments, right? So those habits were built early on, and that's what I'm here to talk about with you today. And what I'm about to share today is not just my story. It's a mindset and a biblical principle. More money doesn't fix bad habits. It simply magnifies them. Let me take you back. Before the job title, before the income, before any of that, I had over $130,000 of debt. And I had no clue what it actually meant to manage money. I was out here winging it, like so many of you, right? And to be honest, I thought the solution was simple. Let me just make more money. But I learned the hard way. More money doesn't fix your problems. It actually just exposes them. I know a lot of times it's so much easier to say, oh, if I had $100,000, or if I had this bonus, or if I had this increase, I would do X, or I would do Y. But why not start with what God has given you now? Why not be faithful with what you have and see how it will translate into the next season when you have more? Do you really think that if you don't know how to manage $50,000 or $100,000 or $200,000 that you'll know how to manage $1 million? I'm sure so many of you have heard of the saying, more money, more problems. And let's be real, that saying is so true. But let's really break down what the root issue of that saying is. Why is that? Because if you never learn to manage your money in lack, when increase comes, guess what's going to happen? It's just going to be chaos on a bigger scale, right? The same way you were likely living on that $50,000 or that $100,000, it's probably going to be the same way you're living on that $200,000, $300,000, $1 million. It's just going to be exacerbated. See, if you're not a good steward with $2,000 a month, you're probably not going to be a good steward with $10,000 a month. Yes, more money brings more responsibility, but the problems only increase when you never really learn how to handle them in the first place. That's, kind of looking back, that's really what was happening with me. And that's really what's happening probably with you too. I didn't need more income. What I needed was more discipline. I didn't need more money. What I needed was wisdom. And then what I needed to become a better steward of what I already had. So then once I was, God would then trust me with more. I would know how to handle more, and then it would flourish when I did have more. And that leads me to the verse that literally changed my entire approach to money. Luke 16:10 says, whoever is faithful with little will also be faithful with much. When I read that, I don't know about you guys, but there's so much conviction in those words for me. So much conviction there, even today, right? Like for me, learning to be faithful with those small things. So for me, like when I didn't have my first apartment by myself, you guys, until I was like 25, almost 26 years old. Up until that point, I had roommates, I shared townhomes, I always shared my space. But what I learned to do in those shared spaces, that I learned to make it a home. I learned to treat it the same way I would treat my apartment that I had one day. So that way, when I did get it, it was easy to manage. And then when I got my new, nicer apartment downtown, it was easy to manage. Then I got something else and upgraded, right? But at that point, every time I got the next thing, it was always an upward trajectory because of how I was treating it and the steward I was of the things that God gave me. Because let's be clear, one thing God isn't going to do is he's not going to drop financial overflow on somebody who can't manage what they already have. Like, Pretend you're a manager, right? Like, I run my own business. You might have your own business. Pretend you're a manager or you're the owner of that business. You're hiring employees, right? And eventually you want more and more of your employees to manage your business. You have one employee who is doing exceptionally well. So guess what you're probably going to do with that employee? You're probably going to promote them. You're probably going to make them a manager, and you're probably going to give them more responsibility. With that more responsibility, obviously they get more compensation or reward. But the reason you promote them and give them more is because they were a good steward of what they had, and they did a great return on your investment. So think of it the same way, even in your relationship with God, right? Of course, I know the counter somebody might say to this is, okay, God's not going to treat me like, a manager, like somebody at my job or whatever the case may be, or you at your job or you as your boss. Right. Absolutely not. Right. God is, we are all flawed in our ways and sinful, and God is not. He's all loving. But one thing his word does say is that he is looking for good stewards. He is looking for a steward, right? He's looking for somebody who can, when you're given a task, you handle it and you execute it. That's what he needs. That's what he looked for in his disciples, right? That's what he even told them when Christ left is, I need you to spread my word once I'm gone. It wasn't just enough for you to be in your own la land and for you to be a good person. I need good stewards. I need people who I can hold accountable to do what is in my will, right? And so with that, I just want you to think again, God isn't going to just drop financial overflow into someone who can't already manage what they already have. He's not going to increase your responsibility if you haven't passed the test of discipline on the small things. Why would he? Why would you to somebody else? Because let's be clear, wealth is a stewardship issue, not just an income issue. And God blesses managers, not just dreamers. So I had to get serious, right? Like, I stopped waiting for a new job or a raise or some aha moment. I had to, I got to work. I had to start working with what I had. And that's my message to many of you. Start working with what you have. And for me, that's when everything started to shift. I built my first budget when my money was tight. I saved my first $1,000 while saying no to a lot of wants, including a lot of girls' trips and vacations and things that, I really wanted to do and could have done. I started investing when I barely understood it, but I was obedient and committed to learning. The biggest difference that happened here is I stopped treating wealth like it was some magical destination. And I started treating it more like a mindset, a practice, a lifestyle, if you will. And that's what I try to teach people, especially in my Leveled Up Money program, especially Black women and first generational wealth builders. You don't need 6 figures to start. Not at all. You do not need 6 figures to start. The moment you keep waiting on that moment is the further and further you will be behind. You don't need to be debt free first either. Let's throw that out the window. I know like many of you, I also started with Dave Ramsey's teachings, and great, that's a great start, right? But you don't need to hit that baby step to start building real wealth. You also don't need a perfect credit score to start building wealth. Again, we'll help you build those tools to get there, getting a good credit score, paying off debt, but you don't need to be there to start. What you need is you need structure, you need commitment, and most importantly, you need stewardship. If you can master those things where you are, you'll be ready for the overflow when it comes. Trust me. And let me just say this too. I'm always going to give credit where credit's due. Everything that I have, whether you believe or you don't, for me, it's because of God. That's absolutely what the result is of everything that I have. My income, my job, my business, your job, your business, all those things, they're just resources. It's just a resource, right? But God, that's where the difference comes into play. God is the source, right? This was just something that he gave you as a resource, the tool, but he is the ultimate source. So the question is, are you managing his provision well? And I really want to emphasize the word his before provision. Are you managing what he has given you well? Because a lot of times, and myself included, I would look at all of these things as these are my things, right? This is my business. This is my house. This is my car. These are my 4 degrees, my job. Truly, when you think about it, these are all resources that God has given you. Am I managing all these things that he has given me, right? Because he can easily take it away. the same way that he gave it to me, or he allowed me to get those things. Because when God sees what you're stewarding, what he gave you, being intentional, you being faithful, you being generous, being wise, transforming other people's lives. Again, think like a manager, right? Like, let's think as a human being, what will naturally happen? Remember, you're that manager in your business. You will trust that person with more. God will trust you with more. Just like I said, like a boss promotes a good manager, God promotes those who can manage his blessings well. I think that's so important. If you don't get anything else out of this message, learn how to manage what God has given you and be a good steward of that. But when we're careless, when we're wasteful, when we ignore wisdom, it's kind of like this verse, for example, in Matthew 25:29. What it says is, to those who use well what they are given, even more will be given. And this is the second half of the verse that many people don't like to hear, but listen to this. But from those who do nothing, even what little they have will be taken away. Wow. And that's so real. Like that, I remember hearing that verse and at first it didn't make sense to me. Like, why would the person who has nothing, everything they have will be taken away from them? Don't you think the person who has nothing, like, they should be given more? But remember, a lot of people, when they hear that verse, they don't think, they ignore the wisdom and they don't think what is being translated in that verse. When you are, again, a good manager, when you're somebody who can really carry out God's will, more will be given to you. If you're not, I'm going to take that away from you. You can't handle it. I need to give it to somebody else because I need lives transformed. I need action done. I need this business grown. I need all of these, whatever it is, your vision, your purpose. I need these things done. And if you can't do them, I'm going to find somebody else who's going to do them, because at the end of the day, it's not about you. It's about me. And in God's eyes, it's about him, right? And in my business, right, if I hire an employee, it's about me. It's about my business, right? So I need somebody who can execute and carry that out. And if they can't, I end up finding somebody else. The same with the job who hired me. If Brooke can't do the job, I'll find somebody else, right? And that's what's so real about that, and so important to take yourself out of it and not make it so personal and see what's actually happening here. So now I want to speak something else. This is the last thing I want to really touch on, and this is the fear around money. Because a lot of people get caught up and tripped up on this. So many people, especially in our community, have a fearful relationship with money. We're afraid to spend it. We're afraid to invest it. And more importantly, if you're anything like me, I've been in this position too, we are afraid to lose it. And it reminds me, this is the last, verse that I'll kind of throw out at you guys today. It really reminds me of the analogy that was in the Bible, which discusses the parable of the talents. I'm sure you've heard this story before, but if you haven't, in this story, just a quick summation of it, one servant gets 10 talents, one gets 5, and one gets 1. The 10 and the 5 both double what their master has given them. So he gives them these talents. He says, go and, invest, to do whatever. He doesn't even necessarily tell them what to do, but go and, use it, be a good steward of it. The one with 10 and 5, they both double what they were given. But the one who had just 1, what did he do? He buried it. He buried it in the ground, and he said, I was scared. I didn't want to lose it. And do you know, again, if you've heard this story, you probably know, do you know what his master said to him? He said to him, you wicked and unfaithful servant. And in other translation, not only does he call him wicked and unfaithful, in other translation, he also calls him lazy, depending on the biblical, translation. He said, you could have at least put it in the bank and gotten a little return. Like you could have just done the bare minimum and gotten something, but instead you did nothing. And when I reread this verse, years and years later, as I, grew in my adulthood, I felt so much conviction even in this verse, because I was somebody this was even after I paid off my debt. I had paid off my $130,000 of debt. I had a good job. I had gone to school. I had done the right thing of what was to me the right thing. But in this relation, in God's eyes, I probably was being a wicked and lazy servant. And I was like, whoa, I thought I was doing the right thing. And that's what so many of us do. We bury our potential. We bury our ideas. We bury our opportunity to grow because we're so afraid of losing. But stewardship is not about safety. Go ahead and get that out of your mind, right? It's not about safety. It's not about being safe and playing safe. It's about faithfulness. It's about trusting God and moving even when you're uncomfortable. It's about being obedient. And that's why I tell people, whether it's with me or with somebody else, you have to invest in yourself. You cannot expect to get $20,000, $50,000 results from a $15 budget template on Pinterest. Let's just be honest, okay? If you are investing $15, expect a $30 return, maybe $100, maybe even if you're lucky, $1,000. Like a 10x return is great on a $15 investment, right? That's $150. But so many people are expecting these ginormous returns on little to no investment. That's not how it works. Yes, it might feel risky. Yes, it requires sacrifice, but growth always costs something. I really want to talk to you right now and be honest. When the most growth that you've had in your life, just think about it right now. Write it down. Just, spend some time thinking about it. Whether you've gone to school, got a high degree, and got a high paying job, whether you learned a valuable lesson in life that then helped you transform others' lives. How did you get that? I guarantee you, even if it didn't cost you money, it cost you something. And what's even more valuable than money is time. So if it cost you time, then that was your biggest asset. But more likely than not, those valuable investments that gained you wisdom and knowledge and truly built you wealth, they cost you something. You have to pay to play. Time, money, faith, and focus. And let me tell you what costs even more than investing in something and potentially losing, right? Because I'd also want to be clear that every investment you make in yourself, it might not turn out to be the return you expected. You might have put $100 in the market and you lost it all, or you might have invested in some program and you didn't get the return you wanted. But do you want to know what's more important than not even trying? Staying stuck. Because if you're scared, I'll be honest, if you're scared, just know that when you're scared doing it, you're not alone. But I'm telling you, move anyway. God can't multiply what you refuse to sow. Okay? He is a God of multiplication, but if you don't plant that seed in the ground, don't expect a harvest. Don't expect it to reap. Don't expect anything, because you have to take the first step in order for him to multiply what you've already put in the ground. So here's the challenge, right? Start now, right where you are, with what you have. Obviously, the best time to start was yesterday. Second best time is today, because we can't change the past, but we can't act according to what we have in front of us. And you can act with what you have. Because if you can be faithful with this season, God can trust you with the next, and the next, and the next. What I want is, I want you to really, I really want to make sure that this is really hitting somebody. Because for me, this was one of the biggest learning lessons, and it took me so long, so much money, when it was right there in front of me, to learn this simple mindset shift. I really want you to drop a comment below. If this hit your spirit, say I'm ready to grow. If this is something that really helped you, share it to somebody, share it to a friend, share it to a family member. Because I really want this relationship with money and our understanding to gain us knowledge, wisdom, and help us, not only our family, but our future generations. And if you're ready to start building, one thing is, when I was building, it was, finding the different tools, finding the different resources. There's so many different asset types out there. There's so many different resources. And it took me a while to narrow down what really, really worked for me. And if you're somebody like that, where you're kind of struggling, you're trying to figure out what works for me, who is somebody who's been through this and can resonate with my experience, I have a program and tools that can help you. But even if it's not with me, I'll just say, even if it's not with me, just start. Start by listening to my videos. Start by listening to somebody else's videos, reading books, and learning and getting that information and that knowledge. Because wealth isn't just about more money. It's about being the kind of steward that God can trust with more. But if you do want guidance from someone who's been in your shoes, high income, burnout, and craving alignment, then the Leveled Up Money program was built just for you. Inside, we'll walk through creating a real wealth plan that actually fits your life. I'm not just about eating beans and rice and sacrificing your whole life, right? I want to build a custom plan that works just for you. We also go through shifting your mindset from survival to strategy. We also talk about understanding taxes, because if you know me, you know I'm a tax lawyer, and I spend a lot of time helping my clients strategize to lower their tax liability and build out estate plans for their asset protection. So we talk about those things. We provide you resources for those things to make those decisions. We help you making decisions to discuss investment. What type of investments work? What are these different styles and accounts? We talk about that. And money, more importantly, we talk about money through a kingdom lens. And the good thing is, you won't have to do it alone. That's why I created this community membership program. I created it because I wanted you to have ongoing support with live weekly coaching and a whole lot of love from our other members. We're not just building budgets, we are building legacy. That is the goal with Leveled Up Money. So if that's what you've been praying for, click the link below and let's get to work. I hope this resonates with you, or at least helped you or someone else in some way. I'll be back next week, and until next time, I'll see you soon. Let's level up.